British fired cannons at the dirt fortress from their ships. No impact. General Howe tries again. He marches his
So suspenseful, guys.
soldiers up the hill, right into the colonists' line of fire. The redcoats are an easy target as they lug heavy muskets uphill. The colonists are told, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Finally, the British get close enough. When the colonists eventually fire, the British fall by the sword. They retreat to the bottom of the hill, but General Howe sends them right back up and they're mowed down again. So far, it's going the colonists' way, until their ammunition runs out and fresh British reinforcements break through the fortress. The colonists are routed and retreat. Many are killed or wounded while fleeing. The British win the Battle of Bunker Hill, but it comes at a great cost. 226 of their men are killed and 828 wounded. The colonists suffer less than half those losses. Although the British win the Battle of Bunker Hill, the colonists gather strength and confidence for the battles ahead.
Okay, so you notice, what was the key factor, do you think, of the loss for the British? I'm sorry, the colonists. So, let's continue on, and so that was June-ish. We'll get a little bit farther into the summer. Let's make sure we're on page 178. And so we're in the summer part, probably more into July. Alright. Now, we didn't want to go to war with them. We wanted to have peace if possible. Because a lot of the leaders even considered themselves still loyal to the king and loyal to the British throne. But they did not like how Parliament was acting with the laws and things, so they were still upset. So they tried one kind of final time to initiate peace with the British. And how did they try to initiate peace with the British? What did they do?
I know the answer.
I see that. Dustin, what did they do? Dustin May.
They, like, kind of, opposed the petition.
No, how did the colonists try to restore peace?
Even some patriots.
Never mind. That's okay. Drake?
They tried signing a petition, but like Dustin said, they turned it down.
They tried to sign a petition. What was the petition called? Drake?
Olive branch.
This is called the Olive Branch Petition. So they got this petition, and it was drafted because an olive branch represents peace. All right. So a lot of people, in Congress, they drafted this petition. They sent it to London, and basically it asked the king to restore peace and harmony between Britain and the colonies. Obviously, when the king got it, how did he respond to this? Cameron? He rejected it. He said no. So they tried to restore peace with Britain. I put no next to it because that's what the king said. He rejected that. And he was going to do some things to block the American ships from leaving their ports. He was going to have a naval blockade. He was going to send Hessians over, which are German hired soldiers. He's going to do everything he can to make sure that they beat the colonists. But the colonists were not going to back down. They felt they were equal to the British, even though they really weren't, because the British page is the toughest army in the world at this point in time. Okay. But at that time, the British were the toughest army in the entire world. They were very poorly equipped with a little training. When George Washington showed up to Boston and he realized how much ammunition they did not have, he was like, oh my goodness. I can't believe I'm in charge of this army. So they started to gather as many supplies as they could, and he came up with a plan, George Washington did, and he wanted to kind of head up to Canada. And where in Canada did they decide, well, we're going to invade this area because it's important to us, Dustin? Quebec. So the colonists decided, we are going to invade Quebec. And you can see Quebec is up there. It's in Canada, north there of New York. And one of the leaders for this invasion of Quebec was going to be Benedict Arnold, who was an officer who played a pretty big role in the capture of Fort Ticonderoga. And at this point in time, Arnold is a good guy. So he's good. He will be bad, eventually. All right, they head up there and they march across Maine, and they arrive in Quebec in November of 1775, but by that time, especially as far north as they are, winter has set in and the conditions weren't very good. So the Americans launched their attack, and how did they come out? How did they come out, Cameron? No? Yeah. They failed, and they marched back home in defeat with their heads hanging down from their loss. Okay? So now we have to figure out what we're going to do now. So that was back in November. We can keep going. All right. And so fast forward, while some other battles are going on, we've got some fighting continuing on, but we fast forward in the history book here to March of 1776. We're back in the Boston area. That's where the British are hanging out. British are holding on tight to that Boston. They don't want to get rid of it, but the colonists want to take it over. So do you remember at Fort Ticonderoga, besides capturing the fort, what were we also able to capture, Eli? Artillery. So that artillery from back then, the colonists are going to use against the British. It took them 2 months to drag 59 of those artillery weapons from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston. 2 months to travel. So they arrived in January, and they started working again, making a fort, making plans on how they were going to attack the British and force them to basically get out of there. So they were overlooking Boston. They were getting all their weapons and everything all lined up so that they could attack. And eventually they decided to kind of come up with a plan. And actually George Washington made it appear that he had a lot more weapons than he really did. He had all those weapons, but remember, we don't have much ammunition. So he made it appear up on a high ground that they had all these weapons and artillery and everything, and he threatened, I'm going to bombard the city, I'm going to bomb you guys out of there, and he just basically an open-ended threat. And the British said, okie dokie, you can have it. Basically, George Washington pulled one over on the British by making it appear that they had a lot more weapons than they really did. So 9,000 soldiers in March, British soldiers, departed Boston, and they will never return to Boston. They got the heck out of there. So the Patriots go in, they reclaim their city, they put their flag up that they've got going, and even loyalists that weren't fighting but were living there got the heck out of there because they didn't want to be part of that anymore. So now Boston has been reclaimed by the colonists. Yes.
I'm surprised that we didn't have any spies between the groups.
Oh, they did. They did. There were spies going on, but sometimes they gave false information. You knew there were spies around, so you had to be very careful with who you were talking to and what you were saying.
So they only checked the people that you knew.
Pretty much, they knew who they could trust, and sometimes the most important information wasn't said when they had someone sketchy or someone they didn't think that they would trust. Okay. We are going to stop with the British forced retreat. Now, listen carefully.